Okay. I'll let you know when YouTube is showing live. And okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's live training session. So I hope people enjoyed last week. We did a lot of work on the blitz for ITF sparring. So the plan this week is based on last Friday's Fight Chat Friday. So if you don't know, we do a series every Friday on YouTube, Fight Chat Friday, where we do some analysis on particular areas in ITF sparring. So if you don't know who we are, we're TKD Coach Academy. I'm Richie Ford and I'm with Adrian Byrne. And we try to make some of the best in ITF, and we try to help you with the training, high-level competition, and basically try to help people out who are trying to progress their training and make better of their Taekwondo journey. So the plan today is to really focus on sidekick based on that episode. So if you did watch that episode, you might have a little bit of background knowledge to take away. So these training sessions are going to be every Tuesday for the foreseeable because we're in lockdown here in Ireland. So as long as we are, we're going to keep going with these. These are free. The only charge that we like button. So that really helps our channel. It helps get it out there to like-minded people. So that's the only charge we ask. So please do that now. Go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. So, as we said, main focus is sidekick today. We're going to really look at the lift and shift attacking sidekick in particular, and if we can get to any other ones, we will. Now, if you've got any questions, drop them into the comment box. Are we okay there?
All good?
Yeah. So we have any questions? Drop them in the comment box, and that will be able to give you that. We'll be able to answer something they have. So, okay, all good.
Yeah, all good.
Let's go. Okay, let's start everybody. Ready up? Kenny, take one. Okay, very simple. Just want to get the body moving. I'm going to start off with a general warm-up here. Adrian is going to lead us into more specifics for really focusing on side kick. And then after that, we're going to look into building the ability to be able to kick well. So building capacity for side kick in particular. And we're going to really bring it into really specific stuff for sparring. Okay, so that's the plan for today. So let's get started. First off, I just want to go front leg in front here. We're going to go almost like half facing and just lift the knee to the chest and front kick. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Super. Okay, next we're just going to lift the knees, what we call can-cans. So just get the body thrown a little bit, lift the knees roughly knee height, and just alternate each one. Ready to go for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 3, 2, and super. Okay, so what we're going to do next is a side kick. So we're just going to side kick, drop. You notice the big focus of today's session will be the difference between a side kick and a flicky yapdalio. So let's get that right from the start. Kick, drop. And we're going to do this on the toes. Front bend. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch side. 1. Very good. So get the heart rate pumping a little bit. Next, we're going to go side kicks, knee to chest. 5, but we're going to jump to switch. So it's like this. When you want to switch leg, you got to jump to switch. You notice a big focus as well in today's session will be a high knee chamber. So we're going to start focusing on that right now. Higher your knee is, the more control you're going to be able to have over your kicks. So let's go. 5, jump to switch. Keep that knee. Jump and switch. And relax. All right, so Adrian's going to lead us into a little bit more of a specific warm-up, and then I'm going to come back with you guys to work on some physical development.
Okay, so as I was kind of just popping into the comments there is a need for us to have one person muted. I need to get a headset, so we can fix that for the next session. But for right now, we'll improvise, we'll work what we have. So we're going to start from the floor. So hopefully we can see from there, we're going to have the elbow back on the floor, one knee bent, and the other foot we're going to start from here. And our first job, rather than pressing the side kick from the floor to here, we're going to lift and press. And we're working on the explosiveness of the hip from the floor. We're going to go 8 on my right, this way. That's it, we go for 8 full reps. And we're coming over onto the opposite side, of course, keeping that bottom leg bent. And we're driving the knee up and forward. Make sure the push is coming from the bottom leg to lift the hip and go forward. Okay, so that's our first exercise. For our next one, we're going to go into a little bit of a stretch. I'll stay back here so you can see. We're going to have one knee on the ground, the other leg extended at the side, okay? We want to really work on contracting here, so we can have the fists down or palms down, and expand until you've got a good stretch. So once you have that position, we're going to now squeeze the hip, lift the foot that's on the floor. You'll have to drive down into the floor here. So we're going to lift, and down. Ease into the stretch, you might go a little further each time. I'm going to give it a few seconds just to enjoy the stretch. Lift. And down. One more time, just ease into the stretch. See where you can get to. Lift. The lifting should get harder. And down. Last time. Enjoy the stretch. And of course, let's change to the other side. And I'll just change my angle here for you. And we go there. And hold. Lift. And down. Add to the stretch. Lift. open out, adding to that stretch. One more time, lift. And down. And ease into and enjoy the stretch a little bit. Okay. And relax. You come back out of that and stand. So get the legs in good shape. So one more thing that we're going to work on, just very specifically, use a wall or use a little bit of space. I know Rich is going to take some of these in terms of building capacity, but one exercise I want to start with, use anything. This is just a bean bag, a little bit of a shellfish, but we're going to use that just to add a little bit of weight into the preparation. So I'm going to use Bob here to help me. And all I want to do, place this on my ankle, okay? And it's just to make sure that I have the same straight line and that I'm not doing a flick. So we're just reinforcing the point that Rich was making in the warm-up, that we want to make sure that we're not ever flicking and throwing a turning kick, but rather we're going to have that side kick position. So go once again, place it on the ankle, extend, and bring it back. We're just 5 to 8 is plenty to start with, just to reinforce. And if you drop it, of course, maybe we add one more rep, start over, and back. So we'll go again, 5 to 8 of those. So Richie, I think we want to go into a few more of those kind of exercises and looking at building capacity. You're good to go.
Okay, so you'll notice that Adrian worked a lot on the knee position. That's going to feature a lot in what we do today. So what I'm going to do now is focus on a couple of areas linking the knee position with posture and also with a bit of flexibility as well. And so the plan here, you notice that what we do a lot of the time is we use what's called constraints. So the likes of using the beanbag, hoops, etc., using equipment to be able to come up with particular movement sequences that we want. For example, if you have something in the way, like a chair, and you pick it up, it forces that better knee position. It's one of the most common problems that we see with side kick, is that people who want to improve their side kick, a lot of times they kick with that knee down position, and that's the start of where you need to get going. So if you want to be able to attack really well with a side kick, you need to be able to pick up that leg and drive forward. You notice that posture here is quite important. If you're leaning back, you have a lot of weight to carry with you, and your center of gravity isn't really working with you, it's against you. So if you want to be a good threat in sparring and attacking with a good side kick, you need to be able to have that high knee position and have a couple of good posture and good balance. So some of the things that we're going to work on now. So first off, we're going to do some chamber raises. Okay, so you can do these. I do sometimes with a hoop, and so you just get a hoop held yourself, your partner, and you can raise it. But you can just very simply, most people don't have ready without a wall, it doesn't matter. So all you got to do is just lift that foot position. One of the most important things I like to focus on with the side kick is having your foot, your attacking tool, in line with your opponent almost. Yeah, so it goes with that principle that Adrian was making of not having your shin and facing, which turns into that flicking motion. So very simple. First exercise, just have that side kick chamber, and we're just raising the chamber as high as possible without coming onto our tippy toes here. All right, so let's maybe do a few of these. Raise, drop. Get a squeeze at the top, hold it. You really feel this. So really pulling up through here, get a squeeze at the top. Switch sides. So the knee position is everything what we're working on now. And you feel it in your standing leg as well. Just a few of these on each side. So, linking that together then, we have the standing hamstring. So the standing leg is something that holds people back a lot. the lack of flexibility and motion in the standing leg is something that we forget about. So very simply, there's a couple of exercises you can do for this. One that I really like is just placing your foot on the surface, partner can hold it, whatever, and you just work back to that standing leg. You just get a stretch on this. And you really feel this on your standing leg, and as you come up, focus on the obliques there, and turn it on that posture. You feel a little squeeze, and then back again. So you don't want to go to the side on this one, you want to go directly behind you. Of course, one of the most important things on a side kick is you turn your standing foot. And back to that good posture. So you can just do a few of these on each leg. So very good for the standing hamstring. Of course, you can do these dynamically, where you're coming in and out of the range, trying to extend it a little bit. And you can also hold it a bit more statically, holding the position, trying to extend it. So just get a few of them on each side. So as I'm talking, feel free to work through those and pick up the tips as you go along, okay? One other thing that I want to work on is the whole idea of expanding the range. So if you're looking to expand your range and get more flexible because maybe you're a little bit tight in your hips, it's very, very important that you understand this concept. When you're doing, like Adrian did earlier with the fire hydrant kind of position here, as you lift up and extending. So if you want to link your strength with your flexibility, that's where you want to see the biggest gains. So I posted a video today on Instagram of using your strength isometrically to hold and coupling that together. So one of the good ones that you can use is simply with a band. If you don't have a band, most people will have a belt. So you can just use a wall again. So what I like to do with this one, same setup as always, tall posture, good foot position, good alignment. So you can use the band to extend, and then use that band to pull further. Then you got to release the tension on the band, so now I'm not holding the band, and it's just my leg strength that's working here. And after a while, you just extend that as well. So it's a very, very important concept if you're looking to improve your range, be able to link flexibility and isometric holds together. Especially for us in a kicking sport, we can actually replicate those motions and kicks. So linking your isometric holds with that is a good one. So if you feel free to try that one with your belt there. So the whole idea is you're using something passively. So the band is passive, which means we're kind of relaxing. The band is doing the work. And then the closer you can get to your active range, which is you actually holding with your muscles, the closer you can get that range to the passive range, where something else is doing the work, that's where you want to see the most benefits in your range of motion and your kicking ability to go higher. Okay, so very, very important concept. Anybody who's trained with us before or follows us along, you know that a lot of the things we do, we're not really about any special magic drill or exercise or anything like that. Our objective here is to give everybody good, solid concepts to be able to take away things that you can apply to all scenarios. So, like that, for example, there's many ways you can apply that concept to improve your kicking, height, and flexibility. So that's the kind of things we do. Just pull the drills and think there's magic drill. It's not the case. You got to find out the why behind everything, take the concepts and apply them in your own way. Okay? Very, very important. Okay, so moving on quickly because I'm just conscious of time before we get into the real sparring specific stuff. Another little thing to help you with the chamber and the posture, again, looking at some constraints is the use of a beanbag, like Adrian said earlier. So, very simply, you put a beanbag on your head, stops you from leaning. Obviously, it's going to fall if you do. And then ITF is a great place for the position here. So, on our uniform. So, great place for this position, roughly, and here. Okay, so by being able to hold this position, use a wall if you need to, and extend the range, hold it. By using these exercises and these little bits, like most people have these kids or whatever, very, very useful ways to improve your kicking ability. Okay, and then from there you can even hold, like Adrian did, extend, and back slowly. All about focusing on the same concepts we talked about. Good posture and the ability to pull the knee up really high. If you can do both of those, then you have the capacity to really be aggressive with your side kicks and really go attack in sparring. So that's one of the most important things. So just a couple of more quick exercises. Again, we have a hook. Why I like this is because it doesn't give you an option. You have to kick inside the hook, and you can't have a low knee position because you won't fit in. So if you're here, you just won't get in. So the higher you pull the hook, the higher it forces your leg to get in. All right. So that's a nice way to do some exercises as well. You can get a partner to hold it, extend, or whatever. Okay. Now I just want to give people the idea of things you can do to improve your kicking ability while training by yourself. Because it's very difficult to know if your training is practical or not. So that's why I really want to give people great value here. Take away the concepts that you can apply to yourself to make sure that you're applying these things to get the results. All right, and we can do it levels then as well. So one thing that I like to do, talking about what we've already spoke on, linking the strength, isometric holds, and flexibility, is levels. So you can use partner with a woggle stick, partner with a belt, whatever. But very simple, you can use a bag or a wall. Start at a level, hold it, then bring the knee back to the chest, and go higher. Hold it. Back to the chest, up, high. And you see it's difficult strength and isometric holds at the top. Your kicking will increase leaps and bounds, and it'll be fantastic. All right, so really look at some of these exercises. It will definitely help, and they're good ways to build capacity. All right, so I think we're going to move on a little bit more to sparring specific work. If anybody has really any questions on how to build a side kick, as in the side kick development, the physical development, drop the questions in if there's something that we didn't really explain correctly, and we'll explain it a little bit further, give you some more ideas, okay? So over to you, Adrian.
Okay, so I'll leave that there. So the very first thing that we want to talk about with the principles as we apply side kicking sparring is you should have a partner, an opponent. That would be best. I have Bob today. Bob doesn't move, doesn't know what hits him, but it would be better if we have a partner so that we can learn how another person moves and how we cover the distance between them or between us, and then also so that they can tell us what kind of giveaways or tells we're showing. But there are a few principles we want to keep first of all anyway. So I'll give you a few exercises that illustrate and also challenge the principles. So the first one is going to be a very, very simple thing. We're going to look at covering the smallest distance, so I'm just outside of range, okay? The smallest distance with the side kick from the sparring stance. And all I want to concentrate on is my posture. So my hands are up, I have my chin height, I'm only going to kick to the hip. And I have to kick with just enough movement to cover the distance. So you can see Bob isn't flying here, okay? But my goal is, by pushing, my back foot's going to turn, and I'm going to challenge my posture just a little bit. So from my standing position, my feeling should be just kick. And if I just kick, nothing else changes, I want to see how little I deflect. So people already, after very little training, they start to make every kick like it's their highest kick. So imagine I'm going to kick Bob in the ear, and my head goes back and my body turns and my hands are in a bad position. So one of the first things we need to do with side kick is train it for that most efficient height, right on the hip. And remember, in a sparring stance, so if I'm standing upright and I'm here, the second I drop back into my sparring stance, my hip drops down. So often, that hip is a very low height. So again, we're just going to try about 8 reps where nothing happens except that the foot comes to the hip height and the leg extends. As little as possible of a reaction from the rest of the body. But I do want that little bit of travel forward. So we're going to take 7 or 8 reps, making that small step, cutting that line, and there's not much else to it. Of course, we try to build this left and right. We might as well talk about the the difference between the side kick and the turning kick next as well. So as we go into this one, if my preparation looks like this and the shin is across my body, straight away we're thinking about a turning kick, okay? Might not be a nice turning kick, but it's going to be a turning kick. But still, you could push out and get the edge of the foot or the sole of the foot to the target. So it could look like this. And as long as I have room, I'll get there and it'll be okay. The problem is if my opponent steps in, I get checked at the shin and we can deliver a nice backhand. And you'll see that in our intro with Cian Ince, with that long backhand punch. He's able to find the shin and we can go through. So we want to have, again, kick, don't flick. We want to have the foot between you and your opponent, almost regardless of the knee position. So some people will have a lower knee position relative to the foot when they kick. Some maybe a little bit higher. But we definitely want to keep that foot between you and your opponent almost golden rule, okay? So for efficiency, we're looking at carrying to that target there. We want to challenge a little bit more. We want to see, if I push from a longer distance, will I make a different shape? Will I make a different shape? So in this case, I want to shift back a little bit and then drive in. So I'm going to start quite close. I shift back and I drive in. Starting close, shift back and drive in. And I want to make sure each time that the foot is between me and my opponent. So I'm shifting back and I'm driving in. Keeping it very simple, very efficient, okay? Another principle we're going to look at is the carrying position of the hands. But when you begin, if your sparring stance naturally has the hands here and you're moving in this shape, well, you want to keep it that way when you kick, you want to keep it that way when you go to hands. If the position of your hands changes depending on whether it's a kick or a punch, we have a problem because it's a giveaway. So if I'm going to carry my hands here, I don't want to open out when I go to kick. So we're going to check this by moving further. So in this case, I'm going to double up and carry forwards. And I want to see that the hands, even over this distance, are going to carry forwards in a nice comfortable position. What that does let us do is, after a hit, land in a position to punch. Because from the hit, your front hand is already very, very close to the chin. So we can take a few practice goes moving over a longer distance here and landing. And while we're thinking about that, also thinking to bring the front foot down, pointed in the direction of your opponent so that you can bring in both hands, front and back hand, okay? We're also going to think of just one more little thing. We're going to use the length of the leg quite a lot. And I have a small exercise just to test this. So one of the things that happens a lot with side kick, particularly as people start working with real and moving opponents, is the kick ends up here a lot. So you carry into contact, but you carry in too far and the leg stays bent. It's not effective. A little bit of a movement forward from your opponent and it gets jagged. So we want to see what is the actual length that we can kick from. So a little test you can have is just go from here and kick. Okay, we go a little further and kick. We go a little further and we kick. We go a little further and I start to move. But I want to see how far can I get by being sneaky, coming very low, under the hip, almost, or sorry, onto the hip but under the guard. And see what length I can put on that. Because all too often we get caught short, and in that position, when you're being caught short, you can't really work the kick so well. So one of the things that we're going to do to test that we have the full length as well is to see, can we follow up, okay? So the kind of follow-ups we're talking about, can we go to hands? Can we go to the head here? And can we go to the head here? So one last thing before I leave you and I return to Richie is I want to talk about, as far as the principle goes, one from the blitz from last week that we're going to apply with the side kick as well, and that's a disguise. So can we hide this kick, particularly for people who are not ridiculously flexible and explosive, okay? So can we hide a step? And the reason we might want to hide a step is, if I throw my side kick from a small stance, it's very easy. If I throw my side kick from a long stance, it takes more work and more hip strength. So if I can hide, for example, this shortening of the stance, I can much more easily kick to the head. So I might use, for example, a test, return test, to shorten my stance. The hand position then becomes very important because the hands are actually part of what's disguising that step before you throw the kick, okay? So principles that we've looked at there: posture, stay tall, use the full length of the kick. So the full length of the kick. The most efficient point is always going to be the hip. Think about the hand position so that you can land into punches. And it will be important defensively as well, because as you make the defensive side kicks, you want to cover against your opponent's punches. Land that front foot where you can punch with both hands, not just the front hand. And that focus again, just as we finish, on having the foot between you and your opponent rather than the shin. So if we change over to Richie, we're going to talk a little bit more through principles and ways to include these into your sparring. So.
Okay, yeah, so fantastic concepts there to take, guys. Very, very valuable. So as Adrian said, you need to know when to use each one as well. And so are you going to be carrying into contact? Are you looking to let that set up momentum to go to hands and follow on? Are you looking to make a direct shot? So it's important to have an idea of which you want to do. So Adrian talked a lot about a more direct one. The whole idea of attacking. Okay, so a couple of concepts that I want to go through when attacking. So first off, if you step from this longer range, okay, then you are giving your opponent an opportunity to step into that range. Okay, so be very careful of that. I would be conscious of stepping with a big step. Very slight steps are fine. Adrian mentioned that earlier, ways to disguise them. But I wouldn't fall into the habit of relying on a step to get me in contact. Okay, what I want to focus on is getting there quickly. So one of the important things that two things that I really want to focus on this. Number one is using short, quick steps. So some people think you take big, massive hops and get there as fast as you can. Okay, but you got to remember that our center of gravity and our balance are a little bit behind. So the most efficient way and the quickest way to get there is, as we said, having that good posture as a foundational check almost. So once you have that, then you can carry your back foot underneath you. All right, so that's very important. So try to use small, quick steps. So as you attack, so small, fast ones will get you there better than massive, long steps. It depends, of course, what distance you are. So if your opponent is right on the edge, maybe you can take them big ones to just get there and shoot off that longer shot that Adrian talked about. Okay, but if you're really looking to put pressure on your opponent and want to get there quickly, okay, then I would really focus on keeping that back foot close as you can underneath your hip for center of gravity. Okay, and we've seen some nice tricks that some guys use at the highest level as well to help with this, especially coming from a bit of a further distance out. It's a nice entry shot. So like Adrian said, you can come up here, and it's very important you don't get caught here. So I'm a left-legged fighter, so right leg, which means if we're clashing with that front leg, one person is going to probably be caught on the inside. So if I'm on the inside here, I'm in big trouble, because now I can get punched very, very easily. Okay, so you've got to be aware, like Adrian said, if you're going here, you've got to be able to turn that foot position to get you half facing or full facing as soon as possible. You can't let that front leg drift on the inside anyway, okay? Especially if they deflect that or block it and you come to here, you're in big trouble. Okay, I call this getting trapped, okay? And some people think even straight on is okay, but I'm still very much trapped on my backhand. Okay, so I would really advise, as people are coming through, to think about what's next and get that foot slightly to the back of you. All right, so if I'm focused towards the camera, I'm going to be going here and slightly to the outside here to open up my body position to punch correctly. Okay, and that really helps that you gain from the kick to get people onto the back foot. So that's probably one of the reasons that you're going to be attacking like this, coming through like a train, get people on the back foot, and get a reward on the scoreboard. So yeah, there are some of the concepts that we're talking about. When you're coming into that contact, a lot of people make a big mistake of kicking all the way in there. Okay, so they kick, and by the time they get to the target, a lot of energy has been wasted. So, like the concept we talked about earlier, having your foot position always facing between you and your opponent, I would like to hold the position and kick at the end. So I hold, carry, and kick at the end when I'm ready to kick. Okay, I think that's very, very important. A lot of people waste a lot of kicks to get there, and then that's where we see this flicking motion come in a little bit more, and that can be a problem. Somebody can break your rhythm. And so try as best you can. Of course, that good posture and good knee position helps with that. And you want to be able to, in case things don't go your way, of course, the opponent is looking to get their own objective off on you as well. So by always having that foot between you and them, even if it doesn't go well, you can just extend. Whereas if you're here and you're carry, if they can get inside that leg, like Adrian mentioned, they can come right through your kick. So very important principle I like to have is have the foot between you and the opponent at all times. It doesn't matter then whether you're short or long or carrying long, you always have it there to shoot and get it right onto the belt, almost like a second line of defense. So yeah, there's two concepts that are quite important. I don't know how we're doing for time or how we're doing for questions or anything like that, Adrian.
I'll just unmute myself for a second, just to quickly pose a question, and you can answer this one before we go to maybe one of the other points, which was asked just about the carrying side kick and whether the carrying side kick can be used to score, or is it really just for closing distance, and that from Andreas. So if you want to tackle that one.
We good? Perfect. So with that one, are you closing distance or are you using it to score? The answer is both. It depends. So what I like to do is, if something like, you got to think of the space that we have in a ring. Okay, a lot of time I will say reset, which means take that space back. So maybe you after retreating, you move, you avoid it off, and now you just want to reset back to the center, and you begin to push forward and put pressure back on the opponent. That's fine if you want to take space back. Okay, but there will become opportunities where you can use that then to set up your own techniques. So you might see opportunities when your opponent isn't ready, or you see an opportunity to take advantage of. So the answer to that question for me is both. Okay, I would look to use it both ways. And one way that, like one concept that you can imagine of that always keeps that in play is always just having your front leg light. If you always have all the weight on your front leg, okay, then it's very hard to shift that and be able to lift the weight, and you're almost always on the back foot. Whereas if you can keep your center of gravity a bit more central and keep that front leg light, I can lift that at any moment I need to and just push forward and attack when I want to either score if the opportunity arises, or if I'm after being sucked in and I need to relieve some space or to relieve some pressure. Okay, having a real threat behind that with your leg is the key. If you don't have a real threat behind your side kick, it's not going to be an option. If you come forward and you have to step or you have to lean a lot to come off forward, that's not a good enough threat. So I hope that answers the question.
So yeah, I think that'll tackle it. So the next question then was about taking small steps versus taking long steps, and which is the way to go. So I might have a little look at tackling that one. So the concept that we're dealing with in sparring is that in the end this all comes down to your opponent. So our goal is with the side kick to make or to cover the distance between us and the opponent, and hopefully to land this as a score. But scoring is definitely only a small part of what we're after with side kick. We use side kick to control the ring position, to put a fence between yourself and your opponent to make sure that they can't come closer to you than you're willing to allow. If you have your opponent in a bad position, to keep them there, and we use it to set up other scoring shots as well. The number of times the side kick itself scores versus the shots that follow on from it, you know, it's much lower. But in terms of our stepping, okay, If we have a big step, that needs to be like the rarest of circumstances. A big foot-to-foot kind of step here needs to be when your partner, your opponent, is already moving backwards. They don't have the opportunity to counter you because something has happened and they're already making a big distance. At that point in time, I can safely go foot-to-foot and make a long attack. Everything else is going to be either no step, so I'm picking up my front leg and go, again, that longer distance, or I'm trying to disguise with a very, very small step, and really that small step is only to reposition my back foot from the more forward-facing position it's normally in, or even the side-facing position, to a more beneficial pushing position. And I want to hide that step to not give away my intent. And usually I'll do that by either moving forwards a little into it, by taking a bounce that changes the foot position, or by having something, for example, in my movement that does it. So I can close the distance to my opponent even with a slight step here, where the angle has changed slightly, but now I can reach. So we can play with that quite a bit and change the distance. One other point that was kind of coming through there was, we haven't really talked about side kick defensively, but one of the things that we might look at in terms of the stepping is, and we discussed this in our video on Fight Chat Friday last Friday, was the stop side kick, which is so rare. That was the one we found was very, very hard to get a video for, but it's the one that most people instinctively think is the one that they're going to throw, which is where the person's attacking and I kick them with a side kick without any movement happening. That's really, really difficult. What's more likely to happen is that either I'll take a step and create this space, or I'll do it in motion so that my head's moving back and I'm creating a big, big, big space. And what that does is it allows me to preserve the distance between me and my opponent so I have time. And that's a big thing in ITF sparring. The distance between me and my opponent is what gives me time. So, Richie, was there any other questions that came up?
Adam there is making the point about countering side kicks. So we might just touch on that very, very quickly. So two concepts that generally go well for countering a side kick is the opposite plane. So in terms of linear, straight line, high, low. So if I'm shooting a high section side kick as in towards somebody's shoulder, then the best place to counter that is coming underneath. So imagine that there's a side kick high section towards my head. The best place is to go. And like Adam said in the comments with the 45, so you often see that of people switching hips and come underneath it. So that's one option, and then the other way in reverse. So if the side kick is coming at you middle, so like Adrian said, the longest line of attack, straight off the hip, you can see the length of that. The best way to counter that is by coming above it. Now, this is where you gotta be careful, okay? You can't directly go when the kick is at its full length, because they have the advantage in terms of distance. So you either need to time it as the leg is coming up or as the leg is landing. Okay, so there are the two moments and options that you have to get in there. And when we say go above, so if the side kick is landing, imagine the side kick landing like this. As the side kick comes in, you take your hip out yourself and come back up high section, or very simple, more to the top of it as the leg is raising. So there are two concepts that I like to focus on for countering side kick. So just think opposite. If it's middle, upstairs is an option. If it's high, downstairs is an option. Okay, and just trying to get the timing of the right moment, of course, is the hard part here, and that's why we really encourage people to take these concepts and apply it to live situations and with partner decisions. Because it's the distance, the time, the decision making, should I go now, should I not go now, should I do this, should I do that? They're the real skills that are the most important when applying any technique. So a technique in isolation is not going to be any value to anybody, it's how you apply it. And that's kind of, this is all the stuff here is very foundational, the isolation work we call it, but the next steps in skill acquisition is being able to couple all this with live situations. So we go semi-live, where you just have a couple of live variables. Maybe you can just use side kick versus your opponent's punches, for example, and we just bring it more closer and closer and closer to live. So then you're actually bringing it from training into a real situation, and that's where you get the real value from all of this stuff. So yeah.
Just a very, very quick one there, Richie. We have 2 quick questions, but you might demo while you're still on your feet. Just if you could demonstrate maybe a retreating side kick, so countering a blitz and the retreating side kick.
Cool. So on that, we got 2 options. We covered this on Fight Chat Friday. If somebody's thinking about it, they're going for your head. So first port of call is to remove that. Okay, and if you can, you might see that lower knee position coming up. That's one, okay, not the most pretty technique in the world. You see it a lot in wacko point fighting, okay, but can be very effective. What we got to be aware of here is what comes next. In point fighting, if you get that shot, boom, it stops. But we got to think of what's coming next here. If they still continue through and you don't stop them with this kick, you got to remember what comes next. Okay, that's one option. Another option, as Adrian said earlier, is adjust the distance. So imagine this is my opponent, they're coming forward with a blitz. Okay, I gotta match that distance to go back, and then that's my opportunity to get in a technique. Before defending a blitz, I really like the use of my own front hand. Okay, the longer I can hold up my front hand here, the more time it gives me. Okay, because there's a slight kind of like deception in distance for your opponent when you have that hand extended. And it just gives you a little bit more time. Whereas if I'm here, okay, then that deception is a little bit different. So I like to use this hand almost like as an extra layer of protection. Once they get past this, I'm in trouble. Okay, so as Adrian said, you can just do this by simply adjusting the back foot first and recoiling the knee. One option, if you time, okay, or you can jump back. So we see in the intro of our clip, we see Ryan Shelley, 63 world champion from 2017. He just shifts back and jumps away as he does that kick. Okay, so there's a couple of options there. So you have the low knee version, you have the step with the back leg knee in. As you do that one, as you step away with your back leg, you need to recoil a lot here to take that space back away. That's one of the most important ones. Again, these all come down to how close your opponent is, where you are in the ring, etc. So, as we said, okay, all of these things have to be applied in a live situation. And that's really where we focus a lot of our attention on. We don't just drill on the pads. We like to build in these foundational concepts and then progress these live situations to really take the value and to learn from them.
Thanks, Richie. So there was just a very quick question from Andreas, which was looking at, can you use the side kick to clash and mess up your opponent's side kick? And while we can answer that and say absolutely you can, the big thing I'd say is if you have a little time, go look up Thomas Fogarty, because if you look up on YouTube Thomas Fogarty, you will find plenty of examples in his spars where he uses a clash very effectively to get over the leg and into hands. But it can also be used just to kick into the attacking leg, create a situation where if you're the one on top, you have the advantage, you're likely to come down in a beneficial situation. And we've plenty of videos on Fight Chat Friday where we discuss the advantage or the necessity to be on top. Richie, do you want to... Richie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so it's just like the most important thing about that, and we actually mentioned it on Fight Chat Friday, is if you want to clash and get above on hands, you can't go yourself. So a lot of people, they make the mistake of they shift in and try to fight on top. Okay, and usually if your opponent starts first, they're going to end up on top unless they make a big massive step. Okay, but at the highest level, that's not really something that happens too much, at least a big enough step for you to get the timing on them to be on top. Okay, we all know the importance of being on top because it gives you an advantage. And if you're on top, it opens up all this area for me, for the person who is on top. If you have the flexibility and the dexterity, you can go above, hit a headshot, or not. You can use that momentum to come down through your opponent's leg, flip the hips out, and get in there with the hands. But one of the most important things with that one is you cannot step your own back leg. So from here, you gotta just wait right, lift almost like a side rising kick. And then that brings you on top, and then the weight of you transfers you forward to be able to come into the hands. So Thomas Forkey, great example of this. And Martin Hidea is another good example. He's one of the first guys I've seen ever do this back in 2012. So go check his fight. I think it's on my channel, or else on the Irish Taekwondo Association YouTube channel, Martin Hidea versus Dylan Fitzgibbon. You'll see a couple of examples of that in action.
Really nice, and I think we'll finish there for tonight. So Richie, if you want to wrap us up, and we will take a bow and get out of here.
Brilliant. So I hope everybody enjoyed that, guys. Of course, we're looking for more suggestions for next week. So how this is going to work over the next couple of weeks is we're going to link our Fight Chat Fridays to the live sessions. So whatever we focus on this week's Fight Chat Friday, we'll try to replicate that then in the following week's session next Tuesday. So get your suggestions in, whether it's the comments here, whether it's in the direct message on social media, whatever that is. Also today, we hit the 30,000 follower mark on Instagram. So we kind of do a little bit of a tradition. Every time we hit a bit of a milestone, we answer questions in a Q&A format for people. So get on our Instagram page, check that out if you want to get in any questions on anything, not just about psychic, anything to do with Taekwondo or training or anything like that. And we'll answer a lot of those questions as best we can in short form on Instagram. So I'm going to do that after the session. And then hopefully myself and Adrian will sit down and answer a lot of these questions on YouTube in a long format in the next week or so. So get your suggestions in there for Fight Chat Friday this week. Hopefully we'll see you again next Tuesday. Hope you hit that like button. That's the only charge, of course, and subscribe. Hope you enjoy it. Till the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheerio. Kunya. Taekwondo.